Hello everyone, I'm grateful to be here again and present to you the submerged site of ancient Mesembria. It is located in the western Black Sea on the southern Bulgarian coast, the most northern city before the Balkan Mountains. The ancient town of Nesebur is located on a peninsula connected to the mainland by a small strip of land. From its brief history review, we see that the city was settled as early as the Iron Age, and once it became a Greek colony, it played an important role in the politics and battles of the region, and went all the way through the Roman era and the Middle Ages. Because of its significance, the waters around the ancient town were one of the first sites for underwater archaeology in Bulgaria, conducted in 15 expeditions from 1960 to 1984 under the supervision of Luba Ognenova, a pioneer in underwater archaeology and one of the first female divers in the country. During that period, the team used available technique and methods to meticulously document the submerged structures. As a result, we have this map documenting these submerged fortifications of the ancient town. In 1983, this underwater cultural heritage was included as part of the successful application of Neseber's ancient town to be included on the UNESCO World Heritage List. In the beginning of the 21st century, around the peninsula, a massive construction work was carried out to build support walls against erosion and walkways and parking lots to accommodate the increase in tourism. As we can see, that led to most of the northern fortifications to be buried underneath the walkways and unfortunately without any archaeological survey to be carried out. Here it can be clearly seen how the peninsula has been enlarged throughout the years, with the construction of jetties and piers to accommodate fishing and a commercial harbor. In 2017, the regular archaeological studies were renewed by the Center for Underwater Archaeology. We have our small research vessel Christina to do geophysical surveys and also use it as a diving platform. Once excavations have commenced, every year we have volunteers from the local dive clubs and students to help us out. Our main method for documentation is digital photogrammetry. We use a rig with 3 GoPro action cameras that shoot in different angles to provide maximum overlap. Since 2019, we also have a global navigation satellite system with real-time kinematic positioning to georeference the recorded structures with an accuracy up to 10 centimeters. The aim of this study has been the rediscovery and detailed documentation of the structures found by Ognenova, as well as to search for new ones. For that, modern methods such as digital aerial and underwater photogrammetry and bathymetric survey were applied. It has to be mentioned that this is one of the first ever successful bathymetry done by aerial photogrammetry up to 2 meters of depth. As we saw from the previous map, most of the northern structures are unavailable to us. That is why we focus our work in the southeastern waters. That is where the most of our recordings are. Nevertheless, we discovered wall fragments to the north that we believe to be buried under the jetty, and to the south an unrecorded until now structure was discovered. In the late autumn of 2018, several fragments of the fortification wall were discovered west of the modern jetty protecting the fishing harbor. This prompted more detailed research in the following years. Several fragments of fortification wall built in opus mixtum with layers of stones and tiles were recorded, and excavation in small text trenches uncovered more wall fragments. In the area there are also scattered more fragments laying on the seabed. Thanks to the aerial orthomosaic of 2020, we now see that those fragments most probably belong to the early Byzantine fortification that can be traced on land. This area will be the main interest of our research in the following season. During a survey dive in the southern part of the peninsula, just at the back of the commercial seaport at a depth of 1.5 meters, submerged ashlar blocks were discovered that very well might be the remains of street pavement. Here as well, more research will be conducted in the future. And now to our main focus, and the majority of recordings that are done at the east side. Throughout the years, in the waters west and east of the so-called South Jetty or Buna, we rediscovered and recorded several structures, most of which first needed to be cleaned from algae and mollusks before any recording could be done, as well as we conducted small test trenches on several structures to determine their stratigraphy. In 2017, we recorded the first structure, fortress wall built of large stone slabs. At the southwest, it ends with rectangular extension, tower or bastion. The stone slabs are lower than the front structure in place by 1 meter and are inclined to the northwest, which is an indication of either landslides or poor foundation. West of the jetty, at a depth of about 2 meters, there are fragments of fortification wall made of stones and mortar with crushed ceramics. The wall is traced in several fragments, crossing almost the entire bay. The fragments wall are heavily eroded with no preserved face. In the immediate vicinity of the wall, a fragment of mortar with imprints of wooden beam was registered. In 2019, a small test trench was excavated between the fragment with the imprint and the rest of the wall. More stones were uncovered, and at the base of the larger fragments, several sharpened wooden piles were discovered. They lay on top of slick grey mud. According to some researchers, such piles were hammered underneath walls in clay areas, which are prone to landslides. In the vicinity, smaller wall fragments were recorded of the same building technique. East of the South Buna, archaeological research has been carried out on a tower and its adjacent walls to the west and east that are made of ashlar stones. Due to the large scale of the structure, it had to be recorded in 2 consecutive seasons, in total of 3 sections that were later stitched together. The structure lays on a gradual slope that goes from 1 meter to 5.5 meters of depth. It does not retain a perfectly straight line, and only the first row of stone is preserved. The area of our longest research is part of the wall further east, where the second row of stones was preserved and discovered. During excavations in 2019, several cross wooden beams were uncovered at the base of the wall. Those are sampled and are pending carbon-14 dating. This year, in search of the so-called Biognanova Thracian wall, a large area was excavated. Many scattered stones were uncovered, and only a few at the southeastern end form a line with an angle. There, underneath the stone blocks, 2 massive horizontal wooden beams were discovered. They are also sampled and awaiting to be dated. When we mark the recorded walls in the eastern sector, it can be noticed that they hardly follow a strict line. That could be due to the lack of research in the blank areas or the result of a landslide that brought those fortification fragments where they are now and scattered the rest in the bay. More evidence for that is seen in the surrounding cliffs, which even today are being reinforced against landslides. The more traditional explanation for the submerged fortifications is due to the combined effect of sea level rising and tectonic activities. For the latter, we have clear recorded evidence that a church collapsed into the sea on a Sunday Mass in the medieval ages. As well as the fortification walls, 2 massive structures were recorded that were defined as breakwaters. The first has an L shape, and it is made of scattered ashlar stones as well as several drums of columns. The other breakwater has a linear shape. It is constructed of stones without clear signs of work. It has to be mentioned that despite all the conducted research, we still do not know where the ancient harbors of Mesembria are, but maybe an old Russian map from 1828 could give us a clue. I want to guide your attention to those plier shapes at the eastern end of the peninsula that could be defined as a protecting breakwaters to a harbor. If we look back at the area ortho mosaic, could it be that the L-shaped breakwater is the one end of those pliers? That means we have to search for the other more to the west at the end of this cape, which is a shallow area where we haven't still surveyed. In addition to the remains of the fortification, there are scattered fragments of columns and stones with holes or grooves that are recorded in the waters of the east sector. Thank you for your patience, and are there any questions?